Alright, y'all, we're going to make a quick video on propane again, on tanks, and a quick reference, a quick guide, if you will, on what they refer to these as, how much they're supposed to weigh, and how much gas can you put in them. And we have two of the most common, smallest containers of gas here besides the 1 pounder. The 1 pounder would be your average little camping heater 1 pounder. So this only is supposed to hold 1 pound of gas, and your average pressure on these tanks, for reference, is about 200 psi maximum, close to maximum. Of course, that doesn't mean they're all 200 psi. It depends on how much gas is in them and so on and so forth. Your maximum pressure on these disposable containers are tested for about 180 psi at a pretty hot temperature, about 120 degrees. So that's just for reference. Now, these are supposed to be 7-gallon tanks. Just for quick reference, some people refer to them as 30 pounders. That means they hold 30 pounds, or 7.5 gallons. You commonly find these on RVs and pull behind campers and stuff like that. Maybe the bigger ones, the bigger campers. And then the smaller campers, or barbecue pit, or crawfish boil, or turkey cooker, or whatever you have, usually gets a smaller 20-pound container, unless you're lucky and you can get a bigger container.
So 20 pound, 30 pound.
Right, 20 pounder, 30 pounder. So what do they mean by 20 pounder and 30 pounder? Like I said, you can put 20 of those containers of gas, not the container, but the gas itself, of propane, LP, in 20 of those in one of these, or 30 of those in one of these. Now what we have here is one that's half full of a 20 pounder. We'll start with the 20 pounders. We have one that's half full and one that is empty. We know it's empty because we ran it out. We also have 7 gallon or 30 pounder, 7 gallon or 30 pounder that is empty, and the other one is supposed to be 100% full, but we don't know that yet. So I'm going to give you a quick reference to check and see whether or not your guy or your filling station has filled up your tank to its maximum capacity. And you can tell that by weight, the same way they do it when they fill your tank. They use weight to measure how much gas to put in your tank. Now generally they're only supposed to fill these things up to 80% capacity. Some states say lower than that, and some still fill them to the 80% mark. Some might go to 75% capacity. But generally 80% capacity is what they're supposed to fill to. And so we'll start with the 20 pounder. And I'll show you how to tell if you have one of these laying around. See, because I have about 20 of these things laying around, because every time someone moves into the city, into an apartment or something like that, they throw them out on the side of the road when either they're evicted or they leave the place. They're usually the last thing that anybody's thinking about getting when they're moving out. So they wind up in the trash on the side of the road, and I would advise people, if they see them in the trash pile, to pick them up and keep them, because there are many different uses for them, besides gas, just its weight in steel, but for other reasons as well. Before you have one fill, obviously you want to check the valve out and things like that, but that's another video, another time. But generally the valves stay good for as long as they're taken care of, and they're not mistreated, filled full of dirt and stuff. And a lot of people think that these valves go bad a lot quicker than they really do. In fact, some of the valves leak just purely because they're dirty. They're dirty inside. They have safety valves inside right here, and they have different types, 3 that I've come across so far. There might be more out there. There are more than 10 or 15 companies out there that make these tanks. Manchester is one of the oldest tank companies, but that's a company out of Tennessee, and they're generally all made around the United States, out of in steel factories or tank factories. And what's the purpose of getting into this? Well, obviously you're clicked on the video because you're interested in propane, like I am. What got me interested in the propane was that I did a lot of research on it and found out that it was twice as efficient, allegedly, as natural gas. It is more expensive than natural gas, but it's portable gas, which anything portable spells freedom. I don't know how you feel about that, but these are capable of being transported if their bottles are up to date and all that stuff, and all that legality is out of the way. They're capable of being transported anywhere for gas off the grid or on the grid, however you want to do this. And so I think things like this that are versatile or useful in any situation. So what got me into propane? Well, I noticed that gas appliances are through the roof. I noticed that natural gas they're trying to do away with. I noticed that cities are trying to convert to smart cities and go on grid under the guise of independent energy. And really, people are starting to see it reflect on their light bill, on their electric bill. There are governors out there of certain states, like my governor, for instance, in my state, that lifted certain laws or allowed certain restrictions to be lifted to allow power companies to charge whatever, a rate hike at whenever they saw fit or in line with whatever they've written up legally. So my energy bill has increased triple-fold since 4 or 5 years. So instead of paying a normal rate, I pay triple what it's worth. In fact, I just got a check back from the energy company so that I could buy a big vat of Vaseline for it to ease the pain. A check for $10 after being a customer in a co-op company. Co-op company means that you're part, you're part owner of that company because you pay into it, just because you're a customer. I hardly think that the $10 or $10.80 something cents that they cut me is enough to ease the pain of a triple-fold bill that they've been billing me. So I've found that propane might be something that I'd rather throw my money at for for a gas range or a gas dryer or other gas heating appliances, rather than just having 100% dependent on the grid, so that I can get Vaseline checks here and there. So I'm trying to help explain how you can, how this stuff computes, because I've always been confused, not really knowing a lot about propane, knowing more about natural gas than propane, and how the tanks are weighted and such. Now, if you look on, let's look on one of these tanks. Let's try this tank that's empty, since it's empty. If you look on this empty tank here, it's kind of rusty, but they clean up pretty good. As long as they don't have any big gaping rust wounds, they can be repainted and refinished. And
This one's been painted over.
Right. This one's been painted over so much I can't actually find. It's somewhere in here. I can find it. I'd probably find it on this one right here. Easier. But generally, the 20-pounders all should weigh about 18 pounds empty.
There it is.
Right. Here we go. TW, Terra weight, or tank weight. Terra weight is what it stands for, but tank weight is for short. Whatever, same thing. 18 pounds. So this tank empty weighs 18 pounds. Let's put that to the test. Well, we can't use this one because this one's got gas in it. So let's use a regular household scale. That should work, but there we go. Thank you.
Let's use the empty one now.
Alright, this one's supposed to be empty. There's nothing in it except this little float device that's in there attached to the valve. It shakes. So let's test its weight.
18.
All right.
That's pretty dang accurate.
Okay, and it's kind of off to the side a little, right?
Yeah.
So let's test this other tank that's got some propane in it. You can hear it. Well, not with the dog drinking. Alright. See what we got on that.
26.2.
26.2. Okay, well, if this tank weighed 18 empty, and it's got 26.2 pounds of weight in it, then doesn't that mean that it has about 8 8.2 gallons of propane, 8.2 pounds or pounds of propane in it.
About, yes.
I mean, that's quick math, right off the top of my head.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that would have 8.2.
Yes.
So there's 8.2 pounds in this tank, and it's capable of holding 20. So it's safe to say that this tank is a little bit less than half full.
Generally speaking, that tank full, and this is a generic reading, is 37 pounds. That's how much a full 20-pounder weighs.
Okay, so for quick reference, it would weigh 37 pounds if it were full.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go to something else that's been confusing and on my mind. And this is still with the 20-pounder, but it should count for all tanks. What in the world does WC 47.6 mean?
WC means water capacity. In pounds, how many pounds of water can this tank hold? 47.6.
Why is that important if this is used for a propane tank?
For volume of a tank. That can vary a little bit between manufacturers.
Yeah,
Same
but
thing with
still,
the tear weight.
as it stands, why is that important to me?
I guess it doesn't, does it?
Well, it's not really that important to me, except for to say that the manufacturer says that they must have filled this tank up at one point or another with water, even though water and propane probably weighed different weights.
Oh, they definitely weigh different weights.
Gasoline and water, water is heavier than gasoline. That's why it always sinks to the bottom of the tank. So, I guess they just use this as a water capacity measurement.
It might be DOT regulation.
Possibly. Okay, so WC is, to me, is something to ignore, right?
Yes.
Unless I'm using this as a water tank for some reason.
Right.
Right? It's not telling me how many gallons it holds.
Just pounds of
water. It's just telling me pounds of water. I mean, that's fine if I want to put it on in the back of a dragster to hold it down so that I can hook up on the track.
Or use it for deadlifting.
Or yeah, if I want to use it to lift weights, but there's no other purpose to know that.
But that's what it means.
Right. Okay. So we got that WC and TW out of the way. Tank weight.
Yes.
Okay. So the tank weight on this one is supposed to be approximately 25 pounds empty. Am I correct?
That is correct. They call these 30-pounders.
Okay, but 25 empty is what I think they're supposed to weigh approximately.
This one is in kilograms. TW, 11.5 kilograms. I think that's what that says. But the other one is listed in pounds for easier reference.
Well, where? Can you read it?
Other side. TW, 25.7.
Okay, 25.7. If we round up, it'd be 26 pounds, right?
Right.
Empty. So let's see if our guy at our local filling spot, the Getting spot, gave us the proper amount of gas. So we're going to weigh this empty container. Now this should be within a pound or two because different manufacturers,
different thicknesses,
different doodads around the rim or at the bottom of weight of steel. Different gauge steel in different spots or a different valve weight might make a difference slightly within a 1 pound or so.
Right.
Give or take, right?
Yes.
So we're looking for what, 26 pounds on this?
About, yes.
25.7?
Yes.
All right. So let's see what we got on this bigger tank.
$26.4.
Okay, 26.4.
Close.
So either there's a little gas in here, or this valve isn't quite the same weight, or it's been changed, or something like that.
Oh yeah, and your water capacity is different too. What does that say? Turn it over. 71.4.
Okay, so if I want to lift up deadlift 74.5 pounds or curl, I can put two of these.
71.
Yeah, I can curl one of these on each arm. Okay, that's great. All right, so this one is supposed to be full. We had this filled, what, 2 weeks ago?
Yes, very recently.
So it's sat for about 2 weeks.
$54.6.
Ooh, you got some math to do. So 54.6. Let's round up from there. What was the other measure, the weight we got from the empty one?
26 26.4, yes.
26.4, and what is this?
54.6.
Oh, okay. Well,
26, 36, 46.
how many pounds are supposed to be in
Almost 30 pounds.
here? 29 pounds, so?
28 pounds, 27, around that ballpark in decimal ranges. It is, it's close though. It's close to 30 pounds of propane.
So did we get shorted a pound or two or something?
Yeah, but again, this scale isn't exact. It's
Right, and we don't know if this tank, what it weighs empty, because it's written in kilograms. If you want to do a conversion real quick, I mean, that's fine. But this is generically what we're doing here.
and it says, let's see, according to our little cheat list here.
All right, I got a cheat list. 20 pounder is a 4.5 gallon. That means that this holds 4.5 gallons of propane full. Generically, 4.5 gallons. A 30 pounder, which are these RV tanks here, should hold about 7 gallons, and when it's full, it should weigh about 55 pounds.
Yes.
Okay, this is a cheat sheet now. It's not exact science here. The smaller tank should weigh 37 pounds when full to the brim with propane. That's 80% full, or however you want to look at that.
And they were pretty close.
Okay. 40 pounders, or I guess that they make those, but they are 9.4 gallons for a 40 pounder at 7.2 pounds. 72 pounds, sorry.
9.4 gallons, 72 pounds.
Right, or 72 pounds.
They're a little bit taller than this.
Right. And 50 pounder and 60 pounder, they go all the way up in oddball sizes, spanning across many different...
Some vertical, some sideways.
Right. Spanning across many different companies that make these tanks. See, for the longest time, I thought Manchester was the only one that made propane tank. That's how dumb I was when it came to propane, or didn't have any knowledge on it. And I'm still learning. But the fact is that there are 10 different companies, and Manchester isn't even on the top 10 listing. So even though Manchester started, I think, in 1945 in California somewhere, and then moved to Tennessee finally in the end of all this, and they still exist, yeah, they still produce. So the majority of these are Manchester.
Generally speaking, how many gallons would you get if you went 10 pounds up?
I'm probably looking at this list, 2.5 gallons.
From 2 to 2.5, maybe?
To anywhere between 2 and 2.5 gallons. So when you get a tank increase in size from 20 pounder right here to 30 pounder, you're going to get a 2.5 gallon capacity, approximately 2.5 gallon capacity rise in being able to fill the tank. So this is, I hope, just a good generic video for you to understand a little bit about propane. And again, they're stating everywhere, statistically speaking, they're saying that propane is twice as efficient as natural gas. Now, when I install kits for appliances to convert from natural gas to propane, the jets are smaller, which means it makes sense. It has to use less gas, or it has a little bit more pressure. I don't know about that, because they're saying that the regulators call for the same pressure basically, but they want the jet nozzles to be a little smaller. Also, based on a BTU rating, they're saying that propane is twice as hot per BTU per some special measurement, heating measurements.
Multiple sources.
Right, say that propane is twice as efficient as natural gas. Even though natural gas is cheaper and you pay more for propane, you still have a trade-off there. So for portable use, propane is probably the only way to go. For a stable home with plenty of natural gas and no threat in the future of the company being shut down or being over-regulated or oversighted from environmentalists, I would say that natural gas might be okay as well. But for portable use, definitely propane, because they also say, and many different people attest to this, that propane can be stored almost indefinitely until the valve seals break or the tank just rots out, if it's stored in the correct environment, which means probably in the shade, a well-ventilated area, and away from, I guess, moisture, so the tank doesn't rust. So it can store almost indefinitely, whereas gasoline might go stale, turn into turpentine, whatever it does, get gummy. Diesel might separate, you might have to recondition it. but propane does not. So
There is one more thing to say about the propane sizes. They call these tanks pounders, right? Like 30 pounder, 20 pounder.
because they're in the low range.
They go all the way up to 100.
Well,
As tall as me or you.
and that 100 pounds or 100 gallons?
100 pounds.
Okay, so a 100-gallon tank, my size would be, my height, or a little bit shorter than me, would be
A 25-gallon
a
tank.
25-gallon tank.
A 100-pound tank, yes.
Okay, right.
And then there's a 100-gallon tank. That's when you start getting into the whole tanks.
That's when you get into tanks that aren't so portable anymore.
They don't call them by pounds. They call them by capacity. 500 gallons, 100 gallons.
They stop using pounds. So pounds is another way to say, listen guys, we're on the low side of the gas decimal, so we need to keep this in pounds. And when we get into the big boys, the tanks that hang out in front yards and in trailer parks and all over the place in the country, then we can get into gallons. And I think that's what they go by. So pounds is another way of saying, hey, you got a little gas, we need to measure it by poundage. And if you got a lot of gas, then we're going to measure it by gallons. And that kind of makes sense. Ounces versus gallons. Ounces versus, whatever. So I hope this video helps somebody. Thank y'all for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We'll get back into automotive. We got a project coming up real soon too for that. So thank y'all.